everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Unsank Podcast. I'm here today at the Ashland Independent Film Festival Center with my amazing friend, mentor, and artist, Beca Blake, who is here to share with us today about her new exhibit and how her art is impacted by her cultural and personal trauma. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Unsank Podcast, the podcast that's all about staying afloat in the rocky waters of life. I'm your host, Lex, and I'm here to help you overcome whatever life throws your way. Each episode, we'll be discussing a new topic, from healing trauma to building confidence and rising above the waves, all with the goal of helping you become the badass you were always meant to be. So, if you're ready to take control of your life, then Unsank Pod is the podcast for you. Now, let's dive right in because we have some sailing to do. Becca, can you share a little bit with us about where we are today and why we're here?
Thank you for that awesome introduction, my dear friend and sister. And yes, we are here today at the AIFF Film Center on Main Street in Ashland, Oregon. And this is the gallery at AIFF. AIFF is the Ashland Independent Film Festival. So this is the office for the film festival, and the film festival happens in October, but year-round, the office space here, the film center, has a small gallery called the Gallery AIFF and a boutique theater. Okay. So they run programs here year-round.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Can you share with us a little bit about your exhibit and how, why it's in this particular location and how it all relates?
Right. So I was honored to be one of the first artists showing here in this gallery space, the Gallery at AIFF, and an exhibition titled Mise en Scène, which is a film term. It's a French term in the film industry. That identifies narrative and setting, and the subject matter of a film. And so my work was a good fit because my work is character driven and does carry a narrative. And generally in my work, I'm documenting my life or speaking about something personal, but it's also a social commentary or cultural commentary because there are overlaps there. So so that's how I was invited, and my work was curated and selected to be in this space.
Great.
And so there's a representation of probably about 3 or 4 years worth of work here.
Very cool. Very
in one space. Yeah, it's been awesome.
Can you talk about a little bit about the work behind us and maybe who those characters are?
Right. So in this space we have I'm interdisciplinary in my work. I'm also community-based, and I'm a placemaker. And so there's a range of disciplines being shown here. It's some documented performance works that are being shown in digital, on different media, on metal and acrylic, and on photo paper. And I have digital moving image works as well on the monitors. And I also have some digital and fiber pieces hanging on the wall, and I have fiber art garments on mannequins in the window.
Can you explain why you chose those mediums and stuff, why the fabric and everything, the significance behind it?
Oh, there's so much to unpack there. Drapery is such a big part of art history, and I'm really a painter by passion, and drapery is such a big part of classical paintings, and I love textile. I love working with fiber, and I have been studying paintings, the flow of light on the canvas and composition and the color and incorporating drapery, but I also wanted to bring it into a contemporary focus. So my work is very contemporary, and this is a contemporary gallery. So I'm so excited that I can show the range of what I do here. We even had a performance art event that took place here in the window, in the street front window, right here on Main Street. So I'll get into that more later. But the drapery, and textile work was really something that I wanted to explore in understanding painting, composition, the landscape, and the lighting and color. And so I also was interested in performance, so I combined the two. So what you see is a few years' work of me exploring these concepts of different types of drapery in the landscape, on figures, in different lighting, in different backdrops and settings. So it really ties into the mise en scène of, that character. Who is that person in under the drapery, right? And what's the story there? But it's also performative in the act of making a statement. So the type of drapery I'm using makes a statement as to what, the story is about that character.
Very cool, very cool. And so if you're making art that's about your life, then you would be the character, essentially, yes?
Essentially, yes. In these two series behind us, I have Road Food and another series, Qualia. And both of those are documenting a time in my life with my children. But I also wanted to make the theme, the visuals universal, because the themes are very universal. What we were going through at the time. This was all post-pandemic. Qualia was in 2021. Road Food was 2022. And, we were going through a lot on a personal level in our family, domestic story, but also globally, of course, as a culture. And we have had cultural trauma as well in our family dynamic. So there were some overlaps there. I felt could be relatable to most people. So it is a very personal type of art, but some of the choices I was making visually, particularly with Qualia, I was going for a timeless look. Something that anyone could be under that cloth. It could be anyone's story at any time. Whereas in contradiction with Road Food, I was specifically going for something that was indicating this era that we're in. These novelty food blankets bought off of Amazon.com. And including my kids in a way that really spoke to where we were at the time in our search for all these changes we had happening in our lives that were really survival based, looking for housing. I had physical health problems I needed to attend to, and so because of that, my financial part was struggling too a bit, and of course the marketplace was a bit wonky, and everyone was extra challenged at that time. So and we were overcoming some personal grief too in our home. So those food blankets spoke to me about survival and also us feeling consumed by what we were going through. So we were without a house, and so we went on the road and we performed with our blankets.
Very cool. Very cool.
Right. Yeah, it was fun.
I find it interesting that you chose food blankets because, we talk about food like comfort food, and blankets are very comforting. And so when you're going through a challenging time, to wrap yourself in food blankets is very ironic, I guess you could say. I find it really interesting that that's what you chose during that time. That's how it started. So my son had wanted a tortilla blanket, because he loves burritos. And so we bought this tortilla blanket. And it was such a heavy, painful time that we were in as a family and as a culture, and yet just this little
small pleasure of a tortilla blanket that we could wrap him up in, we were like finding these special moments in just these really simple joys of life that were kind of helping us move on to the next moment, even though our hearts were so burdened. And so that's exactly what it was speaking to. And then I thought, this could be really intriguing to add a few more other blankets and work with this theme some more. And I have a book, Road Food. I actually compiled it into a book.
Great.
And in the foreword of the book is quite a bit of information about, this process of what I went through. And I give reference to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the pyramid, and how important, these foundational pieces are for that self-actualization at the top of the pyramid. So, having your physical needs met, right? If you're having trauma and you're, in your crisis, first you really want to make sure you physically, are someplace safe. Right? And you have what you need in your food and tend to your physical needs, your body. And then you can move more to your emotional needs. And then, have a sense of safety. And then you want to develop a sense of belonging, which I think is more of that mental connection.
Right.
And then from there, you can move up the pyramid. So I would suggest that's why I included it in the book, because that's kind of where I was at that time with Road Food. It's like, okay, we've got to get the basics taken care of here, so we can get back to helping others.
Right.
So that's a good resource too for people to look up. And
that's so neat. How does doing art and being an artist help you deal with those moments in your life and your trauma, and does it help you work through it, and how do those two relate? Does being an artist influence your life? Does your life influence your art?
Very much so. I mean, it's intense. Every time I take on a project, I learn something new about the topic or the subject that my art is encompassing, conceptually, but also, literally. So recently I had a performance art event here on the topic of identity, making an identity art garment. And that was a huge learning curve for me. To have to understand what the conversation is about identity, and of course trauma can be closely tied to identity
absolutely.
too,
100%.
right? So and prior to that we had collaborated on the show all about women and empowering women, so that was really close to my identity as well. And there's been trauma there, generations of trauma for women. Maybe we weren't included in the conversation for hundreds of years about our own history and university. So, we're still, I know in my family of origin, that was a place of contention and trauma in my childhood. That dynamic and struggle between my parents, of my mom wanting to be more active in her role outside of just domestic role, and the community. And so, education's a big part of that. And she wasn't encouraged to have a college education. So anyway, so there was a tension there, and there are conflicts that come about from that. And so, and going into those topics, it's dicey sometimes. You get into some sticky points in your mind and in your emotions. And then, externally sharing that with the world, it's a bit vulnerable. There's a vulnerability there.
That's where I think the best art comes from, though, is when you're vulnerable.
Depending on the topic, can be a really powerful thing to experience. And so I tend to have this phase right before I show the new work.
Yeah.
Where I'm a little sensitive to
Yeah.
how are people going to interact with this or respond to this.
Yeah.
It gets to be a little bit intense. That never really gets old.
Yeah.
Really get comfortable.
Yeah, I feel it, all the time. Being a DJ and having this podcast, even, it's very vulnerable, But I don't know. I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, I get nervous, but it feels so good to, like, put that out there. And then once it's out there, I'm like, this is awesome and great. And hopefully it'll help people. And I think your art will help people, People feel connected to you and to what you're going through. I know some of your pieces have had a big effect on me. I think they're really cool. I love your Medusa piece. And then the fact that you put it and you transferred it onto that jacket, it's really significant because that's part of your identity and you're weaving it into the fabric, and it's very cool. Your art is super, super interesting and super impactful, and it's great what you're doing.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I do. I encourage people to have that sense of vulnerability at sometimes because it helps you grow as a person, and have genuine, authentic experiences.
Yeah.
But it is tough to get there. Medusa is not an easy topic.
No.
A lot of people are like, "Oh, that's so dark," and then
and
other people love it, and they want to buy it and be a part of it. But for me, it's in reference to a French writer, Hélène Cixous.
Yeah.
Who wrote about the importance of women sharing their story.
Yeah.
So in her work, The Laugh of the Medusa.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of reference I'm making there to my role as a woman.
Yeah.
And so I don't feel it as a heaviness. I feel it as an empowerment. But the story of Medusa is pretty
very heavy. Yeah.
And I say she's actually a victim.
Yeah.
But then she's turned into this, perceived as a monster.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
It's also interesting, too, how she's perceived as a monster, and people who share their stories can be villainized in today's society. But I think it's important, like you were saying, to share your story because it sheds light on these important subjects. And, it may be dark, and I come up with that conflict in the podcast because it's like, is this going to be too dark for people? Are they going to want to listen to it? Is this going to be too much? But, at the end of the day, those conversations need to be had, and they're important conversations. And if we don't bring them into the light, they stay in the darkness, and then nothing ever changes. And we just live in this society where we're told to push our feelings down and just move on with our lives. And I think talking about things is healing. I think art is healing, and I think the more that we talk about these things and use these modalities to heal, the stronger and more united will be as a whole, as in humanity. All generations, all cultures. Yeah. I agree. I think that's the goal, is unity. Yeah. But also, have that ability to pass it down to the next generation. Yeah. This narrative, this story of how we're all experiencing these challenges. Yeah. And women were kind of disconnected from that for quite some time. And so it's important, I feel, to keep that conversation going. How do we continue to empower one another as women? Absolutely. Which is what you're doing. Yes. So awesome. I'm just, I don't know. I'm just doing what I think is right, which is sharing my story and sharing other people's stories to help people who are struggling, who may not have resources, get the resources they need to just heal and grow and be the best versions of themselves. So that's my mission, and I get to do it with amazing friends and just amazing people I've met throughout this process, and that makes it even more special. You're doing such a great job. Thank you. It's fantastic. And I think not everybody might be ready to share their story. That's the other thing I've learned about vulnerability is the story will come up when it's ready to be shared. And so not to push yourself, to be gentle with yourself. Yeah. But and to be protective of yourself too. So I'm not saying put yourself in jeopardy by being vulnerable. Right. Yeah. I'm mostly saying
allow yourself to be seen sometimes,
Yeah.
For what you're going through, even though it might be difficult.
Yeah.
And so that's been, part of the challenge of making my art personal.
Yeah.
But also it's been a reward in a way, because I do see it impacting people positively. Yeah. And so if I can share what I've been going through, what has been helping me, or the challenges I've been facing, and start, like I said, those conversations, or have a positive impact on someone, then it's worth it.
Yeah. I think that, I don't know, I think being vulnerable is seen as a weakness, but I think it makes you stronger, really.
Yeah, I think so.
It's to me, I think it's looking that thing in the eye and saying, like, I'm not afraid of you, and I'm not scared to say this, and I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it as many times and as loud as I can,
right? Because
it needs to be said.
Well, that we were talking about that too when we were putting together the woman-centric art exhibitions. The last two that we did together.
Yeah.
Is that sometimes these domestic issues are kind of kept in the closet, like historically and culturally. Some cultures more than others. Yeah. You're not supposed to talk about those things.
Yeah.
And so, but I feel like we are living in a time when, with social media and all this, heightened sense of communication and information, that, it's become more accepted to share these stories, but also more really important, because that means there's so many other influences out there that could negatively impact young people, right, and or any people really, but particularly young people, and women in this case, who might need that extra bit of support, mentally, culturally, to say, hey, no, this isn't okay, you know. And this is what I went through, and to inspire somebody else. So thank you for helping me do that. Awesome.
I love working with you. I think it's great. I love that whenever we get together, it's something really important, and we're teaming up to shed light on these super important issues, and it's fun. It's always a pleasure getting together and doing fun projects with you. I'm excited for our next one.
Me too.
Whatever it is.
Yes. A few things cooking in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And art, especially conceptual art, is such a great vehicle for that, because we can bring, these critical thinking and engagement on these important topics. And so that's another aspect of it that's healing for me on a cultural level, because that's what I feel is needed for these conversations to happen. So when I can combine my efforts as a community-based artist with nonprofits that are interested in those causes or whatever that topic is, then it really enriches me as an artist, but then enriches the community too, and supports that cause. Yeah. So that's another aspect of my work that I like. That's that can focus on trauma and the need for healing, or just an important conversation in the community. So, this last project with identity, the identity garment, it was big, because I got to study this conversation happening around identity, and then having myself 2 children who are BIPOC, so they're part Indigenous, and then my culture intersecting with their cultures, and having this awareness that I've been living between 2 cultures, and how, or even, some people are living between more than 2, and that dynamic, and how difficult that can be at times. And that's trauma. That can be traumatic, because you might not feel like you belong somewhere.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And so identity, it's really important for people to feel that they belong where they are, and so it also ties into placemaking and understanding the place that you live, or the groups that you are a part of, with your family group, or your friend group, or your professional group. So, it's a big process to identify what you want to work on, and document, when it's personal, documenting your life, sharing about it. There's this vulnerability that happens. But I do end up learning so much through the process.
Yeah.
And I don't intend to have art be therapy, but there are practices out, that are very successful with therapeutic art, visual art. Of course, I was in the therapeutic arts and for many years with body therapy, but this is a little different. So I don't look at art to be my therapy, but sometimes there is a crossover where it's helping me have that critical engagement and introspectiveness of myself that I end up learning from it, and I do end up improving on a personal level.
What would you say is your favorite healing modality, or what helps you heal the most?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Like I said, I tend to try to do like a mindfulness check. I mean, if it's just like instantaneous healing, I check my mindset. I try to shift my attention towards something, like I said, with road food, that's going to lift my spirits.
Yeah.
And then, try to get grounded and do something to support my body physically.
Yeah.
Like hydrotherapy is really amazing. Just drinking water.
Yeah.
But also special water, that you might charge it in some way, or it's spring water or whatever it is for your thing. But and then soaking is good. Soaking your feet or soaking your body, or even just taking a shower. And just like intending for whatever it is, the stress to just clear. So I tend to want to just kind of get into a better mindset. Kind of check my physical space I'm in, and then really do some work with my emotions if they're needing to be addressed, because in Hawaiian they teach your brain and your heart can go anywhere at any moment, but your gut is always right here in this moment. So it's wild to see how fast we can get emotionally or mentally, swept away by something.
True.
So that mindfulness is really helpful.
Happens to me all the time.
Right? Yeah. And then, you find out what your thing is. If it's a tortilla blanket that lifts you up, do it, But so long as it's, healthy for you. Yeah,
definitely. Do you have any more art projects coming up? I know you just opened this one, but what are you doing next? Do you have anything in the works?
Oh, yeah, I just finished another show. So we had the performance art event here where I finished construction of the identity art garment. Which was really incredible. And I had pieces that my kids had made that I incorporated into the garment. And then to have a performance live sewing, in public, that was an amazing experience. And to be part of this lineage of women artists who were in performance discipline, so significant. And then I shifted gears and had a show the following week, working with, again, some concepts in lighting that I had been experimenting with, and some more Medusa concepts at the Scott Lewis Gallery here in Ashland. And that was a lot of fun. I had a lot of feedback from that. That was super exciting. And so now I'm working, next project is working on a mural.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah. So the Scott Lewis Gallery show, I got to go back to studio and work with paints.
Cool.
And so that kind of is prepping me for the painting next with the mural project, which is going to be pretty big, and that should keep me pretty busy for the rest of the year.
There you go.
I think so.
Very cool. Is there anything else you'd like to add or share?
I think that if somebody might be wondering, what contemporary art is all about, or interested in performance art, there's some great things to look up online, and it'd be nice to see more engagement like that here where we live, because we're in a rural area here, and so there's this kind of idea that, this type of art is more prevalent in these larger cities.
Yeah.
And in urban areas.
Yeah.
But I think if we can have a conversation around why this type of art is important and significant, we might see it happening more in some of these more remote areas, that are more rural, such as where we are right now. And then maybe we can bring, this higher sense of value or importance to it culturally.
Yeah.
So my interest is not just working in the arts, but also in culture.
Yeah.
And I think we've experienced a lot of cultural trauma, and we're experiencing it even more right now. I mean, it's ongoing. It's happening in Hawaii, what's happening in Ukraine, what's happening in Israel, Palestine, Russia, all these different places.
Yeah.
Almost feels like we're in a culture war sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So that really hits home to me, with my intersecting identities with my kids and their families. So that's an area I'd really like to focus on. And I think that this type of conceptual art and performative art really can help us have important conversations around that and hopefully positively impact the culture.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see more of that happening. And so I really appreciate any opportunity I get to do that type of work. So I want to thank the film festival here for having us and having me here to do this type of work, because it's so needed and so important, and they're really holding a space for something contemporary and what's the word? Intellectual.
Yeah, definitely. It does make you think. Which is very cool. I think art should make you think.
Right. Yeah, and it's immersive.
Yeah.
That's what I like about performance art is you feel like you're part of something happening. That performative act is an immersive experience, right? Yeah. And so that's another area of focus here at this gallery. Is they're wanting to bring in more of an immersive experience.
Very cool.
And engage with this type of critical thinking.
Yeah.
These important conversations for the community at large. So it's just been an awesome opportunity and fit for my work.
Yeah, this is very awesome. I love that they're doing this, and I love them for having us, and this is all very cool. Where can people find you on social media and the internet and get more of your art, get more information on, keep up with what you're doing?
I do have a website, becablake.com or becablakeart.com. And I have, my Instagram is at mindwaves.collective. And I usually post whatever's going on there. I have Facebook too, Beca Blake, and Mindwave Studio on Facebook. That's about it for now. Just website, social media.
Great. And where can people find out more about the Ashland Independent Film Festival and what they're doing and all their fun, exciting stuff coming up?
Yeah, they have a great website, ashlandfilms.org, I think. And if you search it, Ashland Independent Film Festival, it'll pop up. And they have social media links as well. Great. And they send out a newsletter, so you could subscribe to their newsletter. And that's a great way to stay updated because that'll arrive in your email every week. And then I actually am going to start a newsletter too. So if you go to my website, you can click to subscribe. Great. I'll be launching that at some point soon.
Awesome. Okay, great. Becca, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And everybody stay on sync. Thank you, guys. Thank you for joining us on this amazing episode of Unsank Pod. I hope that you found inspiration, healing, and the courage to rise above the waves of life. To stay connected and receive updates on future episodes, follow us on Instagram at unsank.co and unsank.pod. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at unsank_co. For additional resources and information, visit our website at unsankco.com. You can also find our episodes on popular podcast platforms such as Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Stitcher, and many more. Before we part ways, I want to extend my deepest gratitude to all of you who have shared your time with us. Your openness and willingness to explore the path to healing have made this podcast truly special. Keep healing, keep growing, and keep spreading light to those around you. Take care, and remember to stay unsank.